Hi, it's me again, your instructor. In this module, we will deep dive on the Scrum Framework. I want to provide you with an overview, what Scrum consists of, what are the individual pieces of it, and how are those pieces connected to each other. Every Scrum initiative starts out with an idea. In most cases, that idea comes from a group that we refer to as stakeholders. That group of stakeholders, or a subset of that group, also provides a budget. Budget and idea are handed over to the Scrum team, or specifically the product owner. Every product owner has one goal and one goal only: build a product that makes as many stakeholders as possible as happy as possible. In order to achieve this, a product owner needs support. That's where the developers come in. Product owners decide what we build. Developers decide how we build things, at least from a technical perspective. Now, one thing is missing: someone that works on how we collaborate as a group, how we become more effective as a team. Scrum Master, Product Owner, and developers together are referred to as Scrum Team. Now, this Scrum Team needs to do a few things before they can enter a very first sprint. Among those things are a shared understanding on how we work together. We refer to them as working agreements. A shared understanding on what are we going to work on, which is our product goal or product vision. And last but not least, we need to have a product backlog that helps us get into execution mode. Let's start with the working agreements. I usually draw them right next to our Scrum Master, because our Scrum Master is responsible that those working agreements exist. Any good Scrum Master knows that if a team doesn't have a shared understanding on how they're going to work together, when events are going to happen, what they value as a team, that team is doomed to fail. So a Scrum Master creates some kind of a workshop where the group of people collaboratively decide what they want their working agreements to be. They can use various templates for that, and we included one in your documentation. Next is the product goal. We draw the product goal right next to our product owner. Why? Because it's a product owner's responsibility to create transparency around 4 different aspects. Who are we building the product for? What are their needs, jobs to be done, pains or gains? What does a solution look like? And how does that solution or this whole initiative deliver towards our organization's strategy? Basically, what is the business value? Why should we do this as an organization? From the product goal, you can create the product backlog. That product backlog, again, has 4 key characteristics. The first characteristic is that every product backlog is prioritized. There needs to be a clear order, ideally based on customer value, on how we want to build the product. Based on that prioritization, we detail the different requirements. The requirements that end up at the top should be very small and very granular, because a team should select them or should be able to select them into their next sprint. The items at the bottom can be still very vague. They can be cloudy. We don't need to have that level of detail, so we can also save the time which it takes to create that level of detail. Then, every great product backlog is a living document. Based on what we learned from our stakeholder interactions, we take new items in. We constantly refine that product backlog, which means we change the order, we break down items, but we also exclude items which we don't believe are going to add any value going forward. Last but not least, we want a product backlog to be estimated, at least the top part of it, so that a product owner can make projections with regards to the next sprint, with regards to the next release towards our stakeholders. Now we have a Scrum team, working agreements, a product goal, and a product backlog. With all of these things in place, we can go into our very first sprint. Every sprint starts out with a sprint planning event. Sprint planning consists of 3 elements. First, what is our sprint goal? Ideally, the product backlog is prioritized accordingly. What kind of outcome do we want to achieve? Then, based on the priorities that we have in our product backlog and the capacity we have as developers, the developers select a certain amount of items and move them from the product backlog into the sprint backlog. Last but not least, the developers talk about how they are going to implement those items. Some teams even break down the product backlog items, which are now in the sprint backlog, into individual tasks to create more transparency around how they want to deliver things. The result of our sprint planning meeting is the sprint backlog, our second artifact in Scrum. In most cases, this artifact or the sprint backlog is structured like a Kanban board. We will explore this in more detail later. After sprint planning, with our sprint backlog right next to us, the team moves into execution. I refer to this phase of the sprint as the delivery phase, because we have the intention to deliver a product increment, a subset of our product by the end of this sprint. In order to move synchronized throughout this delivery phase, every good Scrum team does daily stand-ups or daily Scrum meetings on a daily basis. During those daily Scrums, the team answers 3 different questions. Question number 1, what did we achieve yesterday with regards to our sprint goal? Question number 2, what are we going to work on today in order to achieve our sprint goal? And last but not least, question number 3, are there any impediments that keep us from achieving our sprint goal? If we do identify impediments, the intention is not to solve them right in the sprint planning, but to take that impediment and discuss it after sprint planning with everyone that can help remove that impediment. At the end of the sprint, a team delivers a product increment. That product increment needs to meet the team's definition of done, which is a specific type of working agreement, basically our shared understanding of what done means. Does it mean that our items are tested? If yes, what kind of tests? Does it mean that our items are documented? If yes, how are they documented? We need to establish a shared understanding, and every product increment needs to meet this definition of done. We now take that product increment and present it, demonstrate it to our stakeholders as part of the sprint review meeting. During sprint review, we first demonstrate the product increment. Secondly, we engage in feedback conversations with our stakeholders. And last but not least, we provide them with an outlook of what they can expect to come up next. The feedback we receive from our stakeholders are usually new product backlog items. And those product backlog items, as the name indicates, move into our product backlog. But it's the discretion of the product owner, it's the authority of the product owner to decide where he or she wants to prioritize them. The final event, the final meeting during our sprint is the so-called sprint retrospective. Compared to the review, where our focus is completely on what we are going to work on, the retrospective covers how did we work together, how can we improve our collaboration. The Scrum Master facilitates this event very actively, and there are various approaches to do this. One approach that I like a lot is a 5-step approach towards running an effective retrospective. Step number 1, setting the stage, which basically means you make sure that everyone knows what are we going to talk about in the next 45 minutes, 60 minutes. Step number 2, gather data. This is all about getting different perspectives on how things worked out during the past sprint. How did we collaborate? How did our tools work? How did we create requirements? And so on and so forth. Step number 3 is to generate insights. In most cases, you select 1 or 2 points that didn't work out really well in the past sprint, and you dive deeper on those. Step number 4 is deciding what to do. What do we actually want to do differently in our next sprint? That action item, I prefer to refer to them as Kaizens, moves into our next sprint backlog. And last but not least, step number 5 is clothing the retrospective. This is a great opportunity for a Scrum Master to A, summarize what did we discuss, B, highlight what are we going to change in our next sprint, and C, collect feedback on how they conducted the retrospective. After the retrospective, we would ideally move into our next sprint planning. Now, if we have already selected all well-prepared product backlog items in our previous sprint, we are left with a product backlog that is probably not ready for the next sprint planning. In order to avoid this dilemma, we do frequent and regular product backlog refinements, which means we try to create a product backlog that is ready for sprint planning while we're working on the current items in our sprint backlog. That product backlog refinement happens throughout the delivery phase of our current or previous sprint. Now you can see that a Scrum team goes through this sprint over and over and over again. And with every sprint, they deliver a product increment that meets their definition of done, and the sum of these product increments results into our final product. And as we have frequently inspected and adapted on what we built with our stakeholders, what we're building and adapted to their feedback, and also inspected and adapted how we collaborate as a collective, Scrum helps us build better products in a better way, in a systematic way. I hope that this overview of the Scrum Framework provides you with a much better understanding of the individual pieces in Scrum, the Scrum team consisting of product owner, Scrum Master, developers, the 3 artifacts, product backlog, sprint backlog, and product increment, and the 5 events, the sprint planning, the daily scrums, sprint review, sprint retrospective, and the sprint itself. And I hope you also got a good understanding on how all of those things are connected to each other. Because it's the combination of those things and the mechanics behind the framework that create the magic in product development. Thank you.